Hey, in this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we have killer Wi-Fi networking. Killer, I'm talking killer, with a special guest, super fast solid state drives, and NVIDIA says, no crypto for you. Next. Hey, welcome back. Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks webcast, the show where this week I'm definitely going to be the half geek because the two guys I have with me, of course, we've got Marco, as always, Marco Chiappetta. How you doing, Marco?
Doing pretty good, Can't complain.
Marco's full-on geek, broadcasting to you from Scenic, Connecticut. And we also have a very special guest with us today. We have Bob Grimm, VP of Marketing from Rivet Networks, the makers of fabulous killer networking brand NICs and gaming stuff. Bob, how you doing?
Welcome. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here. Really excited.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming aboard. We figured we would kick it around today. We are missing our third wheel, Paul Lilly, who is not with us today. So it was a great opportunity for Bob to join us and chat a little bit about something that you folks introduced. John, I don't know if you can bring this up on the screen. Something you folks introduced at CES 2018 this year in Las Vegas. We had a little bit of coverage up on Hot Hardware about this, but it'd be great to get your insights directly on the killer 1550 wireless AC module that was actually co-developed with Intel. Maybe start, Bob, before we dive into the actual product. So that's cool. We'll talk about that. Offering some serious performance for Wi-Fi networking. But let's talk a little bit about sort of the lineage with Killer, and then your name, rank, and serial number in the company and all that good stuff. And then we'll talk tech.
Sure. No, makes total sense. So I'm actually one of the guys that helped started Killer Networking Products way back in 2005. So it's been a kind of a long, crazy ride to get here. And one of the, probably the most exciting part about the launch of the 1550 is that we did it with Intel. We, because our company used to be owned by Qualcomm, and we spun out about 2.5 years ago. Actually, gosh, it's been 3 years now. So about 2 years ago, Intel came to us and said, hey, listen, we'd really like you to use our chipsets. And we had a conversation with them, and it was really interesting because Intel's Wi-Fi chipsets have really been getting better over time. And so, but we said, look, if we're going to make a move, we need to make a move to a product that really has some unique features and some advantages over existing Wi-Fi chips. And when we left the conversation, we thought, frankly, we don't know what they're going to do. They actually called us a few months later and said, we're going for it. We're going to build a new chipset. It's going to have twice the throughput, and we'd love to work with you guys. And frankly, that sparked off a whole lot of work for us to kind of work with them, make sure we had the right chipset, the right access to the chipset, all the logistical things in place so that we could work with them to incorporate it as one of our products and sell it. And frankly, we're pumped about it. And it's weird for me because personally, you guys know I used to work at AMD back in the day. So working with Intel has been a little bit of a weird thing for me, but frankly, they've been pretty great to work with.
Interesting. So we've known Bob for forever, since the beginning of Dirt, maybe. But Marco, you've looked at this technology. We've played around with your gaming NIC technology in the past. Looked at performance advantage it offers in terms of ping times, in terms of latency, and really what's essentially traffic shaping specifically for dedicated gaming scenarios. How does this product differ in that way? And is it silicon IP that you guys bring to the party, or is it a combination of Intel silicon IP and your special mojo mixed in? How does that all come together?
It's a great question. So what we deliver with Killers, we make a promise that we're going to do the best hardware and the best software. To be perfectly blunt, making a Wi-Fi chip costs hundreds of millions of dollars, and for companies to recoup that money, they've got to sell, hundreds of millions of the chips. So what we do is we work with vendors and we test the chips that we think are best. Historically, we think that's been Qualcomm and Intel, and we work with them as the hardware vendor. So the hardware is 100% Intel's, and then what we do is we work with them to make sure that either they have built or that they will build. In this case, they built it in for us, access so that we could put in the queuing mechanism structure we needed to do the traffic shaping. So working with Intel, we kind of had a list of, these 10 things have to be in the chip and they have to be exposed to us in a way that we can use it. And so, so with the 1550, what you get is, the big feature is that it has what's called 160 megahertz channel support. And to put it in context, basically everything else out there has 80 megahertz, including our stuff. They're 80 megahertz channels, that's what's standard. Well, with 160 megahertz channel, you basically have a path that's twice as wide, and you can literally have twice the throughput. So from a throughput standpoint, you can get, from a theoretical standpoint, you should get 1.7 gigabits of throughput. That's like if the stars were aligned and Wi-Fi worked perfectly. We all know that is never the case. In actual real world scenarios in our labs, we're seeing 1.2 pretty consistently gigs of throughput. And we do see 1.3 if there's not a lot of contention in the air from other networks or from other businesses around our office. So, but if you think about it, that's pretty damn cool. Having a Wi-Fi connection that can go well over a gig in real world performance it's pretty sweet.
Interesting. So is it compatible with legacy routers? How does it work in terms of the interface from the NIC to the router? How's that all come together?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So most routers out there today still have a 80 megahertz channel. So if you buy the 1550 or machine with the 1550, it'll work. It'll be backwards compatible with existing routers. If you buy a router with 160 megahertz channel, then you'll see these increased throughputs. And here's the catch: some routers have 160 megahertz channels, but they still have a gig switch in them. So if you're buying a router and you want to get if you really want to max wireless throughput to get these speeds, you need to find one with 160 megahertz support and a switch that can go over a gig. Those exist, but frankly, there are not a lot of them. However, by the end of this year, we expect to see a lot more of those in the market.
So it's the latest class of AC routers with what chipset are in the routers? Do you know that gives you that optimal performance?
Yep. Qualcomm has it. We've seen some from others. I'm sure Broadcom and Marvell. Qualcomm is the one we've seen that with the best performance, though. Gotcha.
And you guys have a short list. You have a short list of routers that you'd recommend that if folks are looking at it.
Absolutely. Netgear has one. The name of it eludes me. That has the support. Linksys has one. It's the WRT32X, of course. That's the one that our software's in. That supports 160 megahertz channels. So those are the two I'd probably look at to start off with. I'm sure there are more, but those are the ones I know off the top of my head.
Neat. That is pretty cool. I mean, I'm interested in that, in general, not just for gaming, but for general purpose use, having that extra bandwidth over Wi-Fi. How does I'm firing questions at you, and you can tell me to stop at any time, but how does reach work at that kind of bandwidth? Is reach a sort of a trade-off kind of thing, or how does that work out?
So one of the nice things about working with Intel is they've developed, a lot of people don't know this, but within wireless chipsets, and really devices in general, they're really optimized to work as closely within, as optimally within sort of the FCC or EU regulations to get as much throughput as possible, but still stay within the legally kind of safe limits. And Intel's done a really good job. If you look at their performance and in the chipset, it drives a lot of traffic over long distance. In fact, one of the things we do is we do testing at 5 meters, at 10 meters, and we actually have a hallway in our building that's 70 meters long. And so, late at night when the other occupants in our building aren't here, we actually roll chairs and cables and stuff, and we do testing at 70 meters. And the throughput's really impressive. You're not going to get 1.3 gigs that distance, but you should see some really strong throughputs that should be fabulous. So
yeah, faster than legacy stuff for sure. Marco, I've been yapping questions at Bob. Yeah, jump in, please.
Oh yeah, I just had because I was actually at CES getting beat up, going from hotel to hotel. When the 1550 launched, I didn't dig too deeply into the specs, but I know on the previous gen, you guys had some notebooks I believe, maybe I'm incorrect, where there was amplified antennas and, versus even a similarly spec'd Wi-Fi controller from someone else, you would typically get better performance on the killer product because, you had optimized. Is that also available on the 1550?
We do not have it. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is that when we're looking at the 1550 versus our part that does have the amplifiers, which is our 1535, even without the amplifiers, Intel's done some cool things within the chipset to really kind of maximize throughput over range. So even though it doesn't have those built in, it still has pretty impressive numbers. Hopefully in future generations of products, we can look at getting those added back in. But on this particular one, they're not there.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm going to go way back to my early tech nerd days when I worked at a Radio Shack. And lots of people look at amplifiers as, they're not always a good thing. You need to be amplifying a decent signal. So sometimes I'm not too keen on complicating things with extra amps and stuff. But that particular tech I had used, I was just interested if it was going to be in there. Yeah. So
we're not abandoning it forever, though. Yep.
Gotcha. So I know you guys, we just talked about some of the routers that have some of the killer engine built in. Now, that's still sort of ever evolving. You're continually updating the software. There's things you guys are working on to further improve that sort of support and how it works.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in fact, one of the great things about this is there are people out there who frankly love Intel because they buy Intel CPUs, they buy Intel SSDs, and they have a preference for Intel wireless. And there are people out there that love killer. We view this as a kind of best of both worlds scenario. You get Intel and all the perceived advantages of that, and you get all the traffic shaping, the gaming advantages. We kind of, to your point, Marco, we do a lot to make sure that your gaming packets are prioritized, treated special. Kind of, for lack of a better phrase, we give them the golden path all the way to the internet. We do everything we can to get that thing out of your house as fast and as quickly as possible. And kind of digging a little bit deeper, we're always looking at more. So we have kind of new technologies that we're looking at rolling out in the Computex timeframe that we think will, add even more value to people who have, killer in their systems, both from a gaming standpoint. And, we're also taking a look at network connectivity, like how to, make your overall home network better. So as we move into that time frame, you're going to see things, along the gaming route that we're trying to improve, and also in just general better wireless performance within the home. So I think all that matters.
Two more quick questions. We just had one question come in from George Hendrick in the chat. He's asking, how do killer networks cards affect the saturation on a wireless network? So I assume what he's asking is, does having that higher performance wireless NIC, is it going to affect the performance of other devices on the network?
That's a good question. So yeah, at the end of the day, the more things you have broadcasting in a home, the more packets you're going to have colliding, and the more packet loss you're going to have. So there's a certain truth about that you can't get away from. It's the physics of networking in the over the air. But what we do, and this is kind of a real key point to this, is we do when we are broadcasting stuff out, we make sure that when we push things out, we not only get it out fast, but we also kind of work with, in our case, we have software in the Linksys router. We flag the packets in the Linksys route so that the Linksys router can know that, hey, this is a gaming packet, this is a voice packet, this is, for instance, a Netflix stream. So please, as it's coming down, prioritize the Netflix data to me. And so we do everything we can so that the packets are treated well, not only in your computer, but through the router and out to the internet. And we actually keep those tags on the packets out to the internet. But to be perfectly blunt, some ISPs use those tags and some ISPs don't. So it's a little haphazard, but we do everything we can to make sure those packets, are protected and prioritized, not only in the computer, but everywhere else.
I think you just worked up a new. I think you just worked up a new slogan, Bob. I think you should go with something like "Be good to your packets."
Be good to your packets.
It might be a little rich. I don't know.
You steal that. That's
Now,
cool.
if someone had one of your previous Gen NICs and now gets a machine with the 1550 in it, does the software look familiar, even though you're working with new hardware here?
Yeah, the software looked familiar. We added a new feature to the software. We got a lot of feedback. We had a really old Windows 8 interface. We refreshed that about a little over a year ago. And we built this really cool what we thought was an overview tab that showed all the processes and applications and websites that were accessing the net. And we got some feedback that said, hey, this is too complicated. Like, I get it if I go to the applications tab and I want to see more, I could get that level of detail, but on the overview, can you simplify it? So on the overview tab, we really simplified it. There are like 6 categories. It shows games, streaming video, downloads, email, those type of things. And then you can prioritize at that general level and see how much traffic is passing, for all the gaming traffic and for all the downloads. If you want, there's a button so that you can toggle it to the more expansive view. But we really simplified the overview to make it look, even better and simpler and hopefully a lot more intuitive to understand at a high level. But it offers all the same functionality that they're used to. So they haven't lost any features. They're really only trying to make it more digestible.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Cool. Bob, so this is obviously a wireless NIC technology that's built into products. Are there going to be both off-the-shelf cards as well as, of course, motherboards and laptops and whatnot to integrate it?
Yeah,
How does this come?
It's interesting.
Out?
When we worked with Qualcomm, the thing that limits the sale of these type things is 100% regulatory. Getting Wi-Fi products certified around the world is supremely expensive, and so with Qualcomm, when we worked with them, they didn't want these things sold unless it was through kind of a PC maker or a motherboard vendor or somebody like that would go to the trouble of doing the qualification. Work with Intel's a little different, so we can sell these independently. So yeah, I expect for sure within the next 2 months, hopefully within the next month, you'll see these 1550s for sale, online where people typically shop here in the U.S. And then we'll work to do the same overseas. So yeah, so this will be the first time in probably 6 years that you'll be able to go out and buy a killer standalone product. So it's kind of a big deal for us for that people will be able to do that.
Nice. So PCI Express card.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So Bob, will the new card be as cool as this one right here?
Look at that.
Look as good as that?
That's awesome.
That's the Mr. T version.
Does that bring back any memories?
I've got one too. I can't believe you still have that thing. That's
Well, not only do I have that thing, but I also have this thing. Do you remember this little guy too?
I do remember that little guy.
That was the cost. I am a hardware hoarder to the 10th degree, brother.
The question is did you have it easily accessible, or did you have to crawl up in the attic and pull it out of storage?
That's my secret. That's my secret, Bob.
I'll tell you what, they look really clean and dust free. So I think you've got it on a shelf in there somewhere, kind of little trophy shelf.
You know what I really should have done? I should have made a pendant out of this and hung it around my neck off a chain.
Yeah.
If only somebody had done that before.
You need to do the Mr. T commercial. Hang that sucker around your neck and have him go like, "I pitied a fool that doesn't take care of his packets," or something like that. I don't know.
The first time we met Bob was when the original killer had just launched, and Dave and I were at CES walking through a casino, and we saw a guy playing cards with the killer hanging around his neck off a chain, and it was this guy right here.
Like next to that guy must be good luck. Yeah.
I think that was at the Sands Hotel. I remember that. I don't know if any of us made money, but I remember having a lot of fun with you guys.
Was that 12 years ago? Really? It was 2005. Is that already 12 years ago?
Oh my God.
It may have been 2000. It may have been 2006. I bet it was 6.
Oh man.
I hope. Isn't that crazy?
So
I didn't used to have the gray, but now it's here.
Yeah.
At least you still got yours.
Yeah, exactly. Mine just falls out. It doesn't turn gray anymore. Hey, so we exactly. So we do have a couple more questions. APEV in the chat asks, does Killer have 10G plus Ethernet LAN plans?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
No. We can talk about it. So first of all, if you go buy, first of all, we do support some 10 gigabit parts on MSI and gigabyte motherboards. So if you see 10 gigabit port on those, and if they have other killer hardware on there, we do support those. So yes, we already do that to a degree. I'll tell you though, guys, we're not seeing fast adoption to 10G. It is just in the market in general. We just don't see it moving fastly yet. I know that companies like Quanta are out there pushing it, and we love that. We do see a fast turn to 2.5. So we're going to be coming out with multi-gig parts kind of under our brand soon. So we just got to figure out how to go about and do that. But I tell you, we do love the technology. I think the biggest obstacle we see right now is just infrastructure is still so expensive for it. So as soon as we kind of see it becoming a little more cost effective, to the point where we really want to invest into getting it out there, we will. But man, I tell you, I think everyone would love to have a 10 gig part if the infrastructure were there.
Yeah. One more question I guess came in, and this is a good one too. Does Killer support link aggregation?
Teaming, the big question. Yeah, link aggregation. It's funny. We get questions about this often. In fact, we had some discussions with a partner about that this week. We do it a little differently. So what we do is we support, we call it smart path selection. So, Windows in general doesn't, it might allow you to connect both Ethernet and Wi-Fi, but it typically only uses one connection. With Killer products, we override that functionality and let your Wi-Fi and your Ethernet, or if you have two Killer Ethernet on the same computer or board, we let you use both. We'll actually let you connect to different, networks. You can connect to your neighbor's Wi-Fi and to your own Ethernet if you wanted to, and we would manage the traffic on both of those. But we don't do what he's probably asking about, which is link aggregation, which is taking one application, separating the data over two connections and sending it out. And I'll tell you the reason is there aren't a lot of consumer applications that can take those packets that were sent over separate connections and recombine them. In fact, it's really hard to do. So what we've done is we support multiple connections. We call it Double Shot Pro, and we allow different applications to use the different connections. So for example, games, voice, and video, those will all go over your fastest and will relegate downloads to your slowest connection. But we don't do typical link aggregation. But frankly, what's your experience, Dave and Marco? How many folks do you know that do that in the home for kind of consumer-like purposes?
That's a good question, Marco.
I know very few, but I think it's because most people don't understand how much they would use that extra bandwidth. This is the example I tell everybody. Lots of, I'm a super tech nerd, but I know lots of other people have network attached storage, and they love to throw, say, movies up there, or GoPro videos that they made. When you're transferring like a 4 gig GoPro video over your network, the fastest you're going to get over your wired network is maybe 85 to 90 megabytes a second over a typical gigabit network connect. So that is slow as molasses in my view. So upping that bandwidth is awesome. So if you can do teaming and double it, or get theoretically double it, great. If you can go 10G, even better. You get 10x that performance. I think people don't understand how much they would use that. I think people look, and this is a problem that your company faces, is convincing people, hey, networking is still evolving and we need more. We need to push it. And it's one of the areas where Killer should sort of be commended for doing stuff other people aren't doing. If you're an enthusiast, you should be really cool on this tech. They're doing stuff other people aren't doing and pushing the platform forward. So I don't think lots of people are doing it now because it's sort of mystifying to the end user, but it's the kind of stuff I think people would use if they understood the benefit better.
I think at the end of the day, for link aggregation, it's about a total solution. You need it kind of on the client end, and you need it on the receiving end, whether that's on the network, the home network, or on the internet. But it's always something we're looking at, and if we find the right approach and solution we think offers value, we'll of course add it. But right now, the way we do it is we kind of map a connection to a priority and a priority to a network interface. Totally configurable. If you're a user and you want your games over Ethernet and everything else over Wi-Fi, you can do it. And a lot of people do. I think it's a neat way to kind of set up your computer for gaming.
Yep.
Sweet, sweet. So the Killer 1550 wireless AC NIC, it will be hitting the market. What time frame, Bob?
It's for sale now. Alienware has it for sale in some of their notebooks, and I believe MSI does. If they don't, they will have it very soon. And then, our expectation as new platforms roll out later this winter and spring, that you'll see the 1550, in those as well. Yeah, so it's out there, and we're pumped. So yeah, if you're, we're going to be excited to get you guys a sample so you guys can take a look at it yourselves.
I was going to say we need to kick the tires on that.
I know, for sure.
Awesome. Any parting questions? We miss it? Let's see. I don't see anything in the chat. Marco, anything more? We want to pepper at Bob, or?
I think I'm good. Bob, is anything you want to let us know that we didn't get to in our regular chat here?
Yeah.
No. I just appreciate what you guys are doing. I love HotHardware. I love the way your forum and your users are engaged. And this is awesome. Thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. Our pleasure. We've known you for a long time, Bob. You're like family. And, this was, this isn't, it's funny when you're on YouTube, you have to disclose, is this a paid endorsement? No, this isn't a paid endorsement unless maybe it was to vote for Bob. But, yeah, it's great to learn about technology, as Marco's noted, that benefits the gamer and enthusiast ecosystem, that caters to that ecosystem, and keep doing what you guys are doing. It's great stuff.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave.
All right, take care, buddy.
Take care.
Catch you later. Bob Grimm from Rivet Networks, manufacturers of killer networking technology, talking about the Rivet Networks Killer 1550, AC wireless module. And good stuff on the market now. I assume we'll even see NICs. I should have asked Bob. Maybe he can hop into the chat. And actually, I was thinking, is there an M2 module? I'm sure there probably is, as well as I'm sure there's a PCI Express adding card. But good stuff indeed. Good to talk to Bob, huh, Marco?
Definitely. Bob's a good guy.
Yeah. From Texas, tall Texan he is. He's got to be like 6'4". He's taller than you, I think, which is a big dude. Big dude. Yeah,
absolutely.
So let's move on. Let's talk about some other bullets on the headlines and reviews this week, and move into the land of solid state storage. Samsung and Intel stepped out this week, same day, within hours of each other. Thanks a lot. Keeps us busy. With new SSDs, one on the SATA side and the other one NVMe. Marco, you looked at both of them. You were burning the midnight oil on these two. Why don't we talk about Samsung and Intel and what they've got to offer in solid state storage?
Sure. So I will start with the Samsung drive. They actually launched two families of SSDs: the new Samsung SSD 860 Pro and 860 Evo. So Samsung, their SATA SSDs have been, best in class for a long time. But the last time they launched a new high-end SATA SSD, I believe the 850 Pro was in 2014 or 2015. So here is the 860 Pro. Now, in terms of the specs, there's not much faster you can get over SATA, right? The SATA interface is limiting lots of the higher-end SATA SSDs. But what Samsung did with these guys is they incorporate their latest generation of 3D VNAND technology. They also have upgraded the controller, so host communications are slightly faster. It also reportedly improves compatibility with Linux, though that's not something I tested, and I don't have details on how that works. But the specs are as good as you're really going to see out of a SATA SSD. Up to 560 megs a second reads, up to 530 megabytes per second writes. And if you come by the site, check out all the benchmarks. It's basically the 860 Pro is basically the fastest SATA SSD you can buy. Now, that may not be exciting versus NVMe SSDs, but there are literally billions of SATA ports with hard drives still attached, and people are still upgrading old systems and need fast bulk storage. And drives like this are ideal for situations like that. And the other thing Samsung has done is the highest capacity model is 4 terabytes now. So this one that we tested was 2 terabytes, this little guy right here, for about 38 cents a gigabyte, I think it worked out to, which is competitive with let me double check that. I might be wrong on this guy. Was that right, Dave? Do you remember?
I think you're pretty close. Yeah.
So yeah, it's at the upper end of the scale for a SATA SSD, but it's arguably the fastest SATA SSD out there.
Yeah. It's funny. Years and years ago when our YouTube channel was in its infancy, and I think even YouTube was in its infancy, certainly before the land of the creator, or excuse me, the what's the word? Influencer. Thank you.
Yeah.
I brain cramps on that. Before the influencer was big on YouTube, I actually did a how-to, and it was, how to upgrade your notebook hard drive to a fast SSD. And at the time it was SATA only, PCI Express and NVMe SSDs didn't exist. And we still get tons of hits on that video. And I think it speaks to a use case for this type of drive, for the SATA drive, that folks should really think about. Man, if you have a notebook that's a couple of years old and you're looking to breathe new life in it, and it's before, NVMe and PCI Express SSDs were built, the M2 socket was built on the motherboards, it is absolutely worth your time to check that out. They're cheap enough now that, it's a reasonable investment. And, as long as you've got a decent amount of RAM, four minimum, 8 preferably gigs of RAM in a notebook. You put in an SSD versus a hard drive, a spinning notebook hard drive, at some of them at 5,400 RPMs, it's like night and day, and it will breathe new life. So it's good stuff. There's tons of sockets, as you say, out there for SATA still.
Oh yeah, and you're absolutely right. I actually just upgraded a friend's notebook. An older 17-inch HP notebook had a super slow hard drive in it. Clean Windows 10 install on an SSD. I was literally getting texts for like the whole next day telling me how awesome the machine felt. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, thing boots in like 10 seconds versus 40 seconds or whatever, to starters, right? Loads everything like lickety split compared to what he's used to on the hard drive. Exactly. Good stuff. And then Intel stepped out with a really nice new offering in the land of NVMe, PCI Express NVMe gumstick style drive, the SSD 760p, right? You kicked the tires on that.
I did. So here it is. Let me hold it up. There's that little guy. I probably shouldn't be touching the the contacts on the end there. Whoops. Sorry. So that is the Intel SSD 760p. Intel also using new 64-layer TLC NAND flash memory on this drive with an SMI 2262 controller, custom firmware, and this drive is the successor to last year's 600p, which was an affordable NVMe SSD. Intel was trying to drive NVMe prices down closer to SATA. The 600p was, not the best performer, not bad, better than SATA, but not the best performer. This guy ups the ante considerably. So double the bandwidth of the 600p at half the power. It's rated for up to 3.2 gigasecond reads with 1.6 gigabyte per second writes. Now, if you come by the site, check out all the benchmarks, you'll see it. The drive sort of, we run an array of tests from trace-based to simple, ATO runs to crystal disk mark, there's compression tests. And if you look across all of the benchmarks, it's not a class-leading drive in any one category, but Intel focused on the areas that are most important to end-user workloads. So you get a drive like the 760p 512 gig drives, $200, so it's roughly the same price as a SATA drive, but you get those much faster sequential transfers. It had very good access times, but the 4K reads, which are arguably the most important for that user experience when you're just tooling around on the desktop, browsing the web, using Office apps, that those fast 4K reads, the drive is among the best. So it's an affordable NVMe drive with good performance, but in the areas where consumer desktop workloads matter, it's particularly strong, and it's also low power, so it'll probably be an ideal drive for mobile platforms going forward.
Interesting. So yeah, notebooks you would think would be a perfect use case for this kind of drive. You would think this will be I would think the OEM version of this would be a pretty good bundle in for many OEM manufacturers, and certainly Intel's going to probably sweeten the deal if you get an Intel CPU in there, package that drive in there, and they're not dumb. They're going after that market, I'm sure, pretty strong. Sure. But yeah. So 4K random stuff is as nimble as anything out there, even like the competitive with the 960 Evos and Pros from Samsung.
So I'll give you two examples. So I did have the 960 Pro as a comparison drive. So if you look in iometer, you know, full 100% random 4K access pattern, the 760p is right there with the 960 Pro. It's right about in the middle of the pack. But I should also mention in my graphs, I threw it in there because I know people are going to want to see the comparison. There's an Optane drive in my tests that is in another class, price wise and performance wise. But I put it in there because people are going to want to see it. So you take the Optane out, and the 760p is right near the top with the Samsung drive in iometer. And then if you look at something like Crystal Diskmark has two 4K tests, a high Q depth and a low Q depth. And if you look at 4K transfers at a Q depth of 8, it's not quite as fast as a 960 Pro. But Q depth of 8 rarely happens on the desktop. If you look at a Q depth of 1, the 4K transfers, the 760p in reads is 194 megs a second. It's not towards the top, but it's still fast. So, you know, and the 600p was only 150 megs a second. So, you know, big upgrade over that guy. So I got to back up further. I'm sorry. That was the right number. In reads, so a 960 Pro was 49.6 megs a second. This guy is 67 megs a second. Okay. So faster than the 960 Pro in reads. I was just looking at the right bar, excuse me. So yeah, in those 4K reads, it's particularly strong. The only drive that was faster was the Optane.
And pricing's excellent, right? Like this thing is, I think at the 512 gig, you're talking $199 and it's like 38 cents a gig or something like that.
Yeah, it's right in line. It's in line with some of the more expensive SATA drives, but you get those much faster sequentials too. So like, if you have an M.2 slot available and want an affordable SSD, this is a particularly good option.
Yeah, and you know what's I guess interesting for me and what's comforting a little bit as well is the Intel brand with respect to SSD has really good track record in terms of reliability. They do serious validation of their product. Samsung does too. Samsung's got some great numbers in terms of endurance as well. But these have they carry like a 5-year warranty. I don't know if that's common. It seems pretty out there.
For the better drives, 5 years is it's not standard, but it's lots of other companies only 3 years. But I've been to Intel's SSD summits, and some of the testing they do is nuts. Like they bombard the drives with like neutrinos and particles from space to see if they can flip the bits. They do lots of qualification.
Yeah, what's that cosmic ray? Yeah, there's literally, as you get high density memory arrays like this, as they get denser and denser, like literally there's a threat from cosmic rays to
I think it's neutrinos. I might be wrong, but it's neutrinos. They're literally they can fly right through the earth. So if they hit the bit just right, they technically can flip a bit.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of built-in bit error detection and correction and stuff like that. It's deep semiconductor technology that goes back a long time. But you have to build that in, you have to test for it, and you have to do the endurance testing and life testing such that you can guarantee the quality like that. So good stuff indeed from the folks at Intel. Is that shipping soon?
Yep, it's available now.
Oh, okay, cool. So come by the site, check out the review. I'm sure we've got it linked up on Amazon and other places to find it to buy if you're interested. But another nice new offering from Intel in the NVMe space, Samsung in the SATA space, and of course they've got their NVMe offering as well. Anything more in terms of storage on your test bench these days? You working on anything interesting? I think you have something else, right?
I have a brand new Intel Enterprise SSD that I'm not going to say the model because I don't want any competitors to go whining to Intel. And we have the usual single downvote immediately, which is obviously a competitor being a little jealous pain in the butt. So neener. I'm not going to say what it is, but I should have that done quickly.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was just checking the 760p availability on Amazon, and I don't see it yet, but they're supposed to be available immediately.
Okay, well, we'll check it out. We'll have to maybe even link up some Newegg or other stuff if we can't find it on Amazon yet. Let's move on to a headline, and you and I can roundtable this. We're without Paulie now to add comic relief, but hopefully he's watching right now anyways. But this blew up this week, and we broke it. We were one of the first to break it. We were very early with the story, and then it went like wildfire on the internet. NVIDIA tells retailers to sell to gamers, not crypto miners, as GPU shortage causes extreme price gouging. And there were further headlines and coverage from other editors out there, certainly on various venues, from Forbes, where we also have a column as well, you and I, Marco, but lots of places covered this, picked it up. And essentially what NVIDIA did in Europe, this German site is actually who broke it initially, Computer-Based DE or something like that, if I have that source correct. They were our source. Over in Europe, NVIDIA literally went out and said, hey, enough already. We need you to limit quantities to 2, no more than 2 per buyer, and as some sort of throttle mechanism to keep miners coming in and scoffing up pallets of GPUs, which is driving the prices, as we cited in this article, many times over, like 6 times, MSRP and higher, 10 times MSRP, crazy prices for GPUs, to the extent that you can't pick up a card for anywhere near MSRP these days. And it's literally, I think I read a headline recently, again, covering the same topic, literally killing PC gaming. I think that's a little strong. I think certainly there's OEM options for pre-built systems and boutique systems from the guys at Main Gear and Dell and all those guys. But and you can find cards. You just have to find them quick and snap them up if you need them for gaming. But it's a real problem. Crypto mining is taking over. It's taking the world by storm. It's certainly driving markets. It's driving a ton of buzz in the headlines. There's a lot of traction. There's a lot of good and benefit of crypto mining and lots of other areas. But it is absolutely antagonistic and in every way a deterrent to the market dynamic, supply demand market dynamic for PC gamers. It's brutal. What do we do about this? And folks in the chat, please chime in, give us some ideas. We'd love to hear them. Ask questions too. What do we do about this, Marco? How do we solve this problem? Certainly NVIDIA and AMD love this. It to a certain extent, it drives their sales of their cards hard. They probably don't get a share of that price gouging that happens at e-tailers. I'm sure the e-tailers are loving it. So they're not, doing much about it. How do we get around this mess?
I don't know. And I might have an unpopular opinion on this. I'm wondering how, it sucks, right? It sucks that the miners are ruining this for gamers, right? But, it's a free market society here. If these companies can make some money and the demand is there, this is, in the grand scheme of things, going to be a short-term problem. And if I was running a business and supply and demand dictated that I could make a ton of money, I'm going to make that money.
Yeah.
I don't like, what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna call the gamers whiners, right? We're whining, oh, we can't buy our GPUs at the MSRP. But I mean, it's the reality of the market today. It's not going to be the reality forever. These companies have to make they required to make money for their shareholders, and shoot, the market allows them to do it right now. So I understand why it's happening. I think the best solution today would be, say, limit 2 cards per address. It's not going to stop it completely, but it's going to stop somebody that, got their tax return, decided to buy 6 graphics cards to get into mining. So it would slow it down a little bit. If the GPU makers wanted to get a little nuts, and this wouldn't stop the miners completely, but maybe stop the mining capability via a BIOS update with the cards. New cards won't actually mine, and you'll have to force people to change the BIOS to get it to work. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But I don't have a good answer, but as deep in my core, I'm a capitalist, and I'm like, make the money for now. Let them do it. There hasn't been a new GPU for ages. So let the miners buy all of this old stuff. And when the next gen Navi and Volta come, then the gamers can jump back in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of have a double-edged mindset here as well. And I hear what you're saying. I totally agree. Market dictates things. Anytime government steps in to regulate, that's a problem, certainly. And this isn't a government regulation question at all. Don't want to insinuate that. But yeah, the flip side of that is, okay, if this keeps going, right? If crypto mining, keeps growing as it is, and the popularity, and the GPUs keep, in terms of the technology, being efficient, powerful processors for this, better than CPUs, you would think someday, hey, the market demanded it. NVIDIA and AMD are going to think to themselves, why let the e-tailers take that price gouge MSRP? Our MSRPs are going up now, okay? Because the market dictates it. The market is allowing it and commands it. Supply demand. But it's tough. I think what's interesting to me is, why haven't the GPU guys gone ahead and built something? You wouldn't think it would be that hard of a derivative. And we'd have to ask the guys. We have to reach out to our friends at NVIDIA and AMD. Why haven't they carved out a GPU that's specifically dedicated for mining, that may not be completely optimized for gaming? And there's certainly some things you can strip away for mining that you don't need. Core clock, I don't think, is big. Memory bandwidth is important for mining, if I'm not mistaken. So you could tune this thing and cut it so that it's built for miners, and then let that sucker service those SKUs and keep the GPUs for gamers separate somehow. I mean, could that be a reality, or am I asking too much? It's too much cost. I don't know.
I think if there's analysts looking at these markets now and seeing what the long-term potential is for mining on GPUs, and I think if NVIDIA and AMD are convinced that mining is here to stay, I think that's what will happen. They'll bifurcate. We'll have gaming GPUs that are somehow locked for gaming and not ideal for mining, and then have mining specific GPUs, because ultimately these companies want to control how you buy how you use their product. They're building something for a specific market. That's how they want it used, because they have to support it. They have to handle warranties, and there's lots of other complications over and above just buying a card and playing a game. So I think they'd want to control how these things are used. And if this is a problem that will never go away, I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to see mining cards specifically tuned and optimized, different software, different hardware, different coolers, different power characteristics, and then cards for gamers. Yeah, and cards for gamers that are not good for mining, and it would just be a waste of money to buy them. Because technically you could probably make the mining cards cheaper, because you don't need the display outputs. You don't need a bunch of other parts on there that the gaming cards have. You can put ugly, crappy coolers. They don't care about style. They just want it to work. So they could probably sell the mining cards cheaper than the gaming cards anyway, and just make a ton of them. And that would make everybody happy. Gamers get their gamer cards. Miners get cards that are, specifically designed for that use case, and maybe everybody wins. But I think the markets are new. Like, I know mining's been around for a while, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long, and we have to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a bubble. It's definitely blown up. And yeah, I think on the cooler side, I think they probably have to maintain that cooler, because actually, if you ever mine on a card, you hear that fan spit up pretty hard, and thermals still tend to be a challenge. But maybe it could be differently designed or something like that. But yeah, you would think even at the silicon level, they can do something that would allow them to parse a cost-efficient GPU for mining, and then build something specifically for gaming, like just separate those into silos somehow. I don't know how we get around this problem in the short term at retail or e-tail. Limiting 2 per customer is one way to do it, but not very effectively. Is there a way to identify what's your use case? Can we do that? Or is that, I don't know how I'd even do that, but somebody smart out there should be able to figure out a binning mechanism for customers coming in. Are you a miner or are you a gamer? What are you doing with this thing? But that's like, then you're messing with people's, rights, to a certain extent, purchasing rights. I don't know how that works in legally. You can't tell me what I'm doing with what I'm buying from you, that kind of thing. It's a can of worms, man. It's a mess right now.
Absolutely.
And folks noted in the chat that RAM prices have driven up pretty hard recently, and that's supply and demand too. But what's interesting about RAM is that it typically tracks operating system need, and use case need. RAM follows, well, I guess it's not a whole lot different if you think about it, but yeah, RAM follows, platform use case and operating system use case, and people are doing more and more content creation. So having a larger install of RAM, a larger RAM pool in your system is advantageous for that. So there's been a run on RAM, and as a result, the RAM manufacturers are cranking prices up. That starts at the manufacturer, though. It's not gouging at the e-tailer like we're seeing with GPUs. So it seems to be different, at least in that dynamic. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. Weird stuff. But yeah, I guess never a dull moment in tech, that's for sure. And hey, I'm pro coin. I think cryptocurrency and blockchain and all that good stuff is great to shake up and change the paradigm and shake things up. It is fledgling, Marco, as you noticed, and we shall see how this all turns out. But if you're a gamer and you've got some hardware on the side, fire it up a little bit for mining and make some coin if you can. Why not? Yeah. But let's move down a list to do we want to hit that CPU, or do we want to just go right to CPUs with problems with Spectre and Meltdown? Marco, your call.
We'll go right to Spectre and Meltdown. We'll just quickly toss it out there. We had a little short story about a leak of some benchmarks for one of AMD's the Ryzen 5 2600 with an X470 motherboard. The numbers were kind of early. They don't look like what you'd expect, but if you want to check that out, come by the site.
Yeah. Check that out. We got, it's interesting. That's early. When you see leaks, you have to take them with a grain of salt, certainly in terms of credibility, but also this stuff is new. Hardware's out there. It's not matured. Firmware, software drivers, the whole 9 yards, motherboard, even, power supply systems, everything gets tuned. So if you're looking at a leak and basing judgments on it, bad idea, generally speaking. Just, take it for what it's worth. It's always interesting. Certainly we love to see interesting ahead of schedule information, but don't go placing any bets on what you read for leaks. And we cover the leaks that are out there because it's public information at that point. So why not? But let's move on to Spectre and Meltdown. The saga continues. AMD hit with lawsuit over deafening silence on Spectre and Meltdown CPU exploits. We also had another one where Linus Torvalds blasts Intel Spectre and Meltdown patches as garbage and insane. Some strong words from Linus, the inventor of Linux. And Dell warns customers not to install Intel Spectre BIOS update over reboot concerns. This thing has blown up into a fine mess, certainly. We just figured we'd kick this around a little bit before we get into our last discussion about the winners, which will be coming up next, of the Lenovo giveaway. But yeah, man, I think AMD was certainly more silent on it because I forget which one it was. Was it Spectre that only affected AMD? It affected all chips. Meltdown was Intel specific. And so they were a little bit more mum on it and kind of like sitting back going, oh, look at the pain my competitor's having. Enjoy that. And so, class action suit comes out, against them. There was this class action suits against Intel. And Intel's trying to react as quickly as they can. And now they're taking heat for it from the founder and inventor of Linux, Linus Torvalds, and it's caused issues. When you have to rush to get something to market or at least get it to market with some sense of urgency, it doesn't allow you to do regression testing and all this different validation that's required. So it's really it's a tough road to hoe for Intel, but it's intrinsic to CPU architecture that has been designed in such a way, speculative execution, prefetch, that whole thing, since the beginning for decades now. How does this thing get better? And does it have to be done in silicon, or can we get to a point now, Marco, you think, where software will handle the job adequately for consumers?
So there's so many wrinkles to these stories. So the first thing, It's a mess. The responses are confusing because not only was there multiple exploits and then multiple versions of each exploit, like AMD initially they were quoted as a near zero chance for one of the exploits, but then future versions there was a greater risk, then they responded. So, and then anytime there's something like this happens, there's class action lawsuits. So that's going to happen even if the response was perfect.
Lawyers smell blood in the water. Yep.
Exactly. Now, in terms of the Intel response, that's fine for Linus or however you pronounce his name to criticize, of course, perfectly fine. But as you mentioned, people referring to these as flaws, it's not really a flaw. It was a new discovery in a way to exploit CPU architectures. And these are features of an out of order CPU architecture. It wasn't like there was a mistake that was exploited. It's just a fundamental way the processors operate. So I think there's going to be, right now, they're scrambling to patch them. And this is the quick and dirty way to do it. And there was issues with Intel's first patches. They have since identified the problem. So now those initial patches, Dell is saying don't install these anymore because Intel has identified the problem. And the new patches should stop the random reboots. So like this is all still evolving. Now, with all that said, I still think it's going to continue to evolve. In the grand scheme of things, I ultimately don't think these are going to be issues long term. And there will be new strategies to mitigate the risks. It's just right now they have to patch them quick and there's performance issues and they're not getting all the testing done they need. So they uncover these reboot issues after the fact. But long term, I think it's all going to get fixed. Future generate, it's not going to happen with the next set of processors because that silicon's been designed, the designs are finished. But years out, there will probably be a change at the silicon level to prevent this. But for now, it's going to be software and firmware fixes to take control.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And Dell's, by the way, Dell's statement, that's not unique. I mean, they're doing the right thing by going out and officially making a recommendation. That's good customer service to make your customer aware of a specific strategy. But that strategy follows what Intel came out with. Intel came out with a statement and said, this patch we rolled out, we've observed the same anomaly of rebooting systems. Do not apply this patch. We're going to go back to the drawing board and release a new patch later. So hold off for now. So Dell's approach with that was in concert with Intel, which makes a lot of sense. More OEMs should send that message. Have to applaud Dell for being straight up with that right away. But yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. It's ugly. I think what's funny with me, and I mean, it depends on your use case, and certainly the data center. There's lots of different concerns, with the threat, the vulnerability in that application, in that environment. But correct me if I'm wrong, Marco, and I'm trying to remember the specifics of how the exploits and the flaws work. Don't you have to have physical access to the machine?
No. The risk for like an end user, there's very little risk, right? Where the big risk is in like a cloud environment where, let's say, I'm just going to throw random companies out there. There's one massive server and, Broadcom, Qualcomm, Marvell, NVIDIA are all renting space on this server. If that machine is compromised from the VM that's compromised, they can get the memory space from those other VMs. So you could spy on another company. That's the risk. And it's like for end users, maybe there'll be, other holes that get exploited eventually. And as far as I know, there are no known actual exploits. Like no one has actually been affected, but those are the targets. It's not an end user to see, what you're watching on Pornhub.
Yeah. You got to throw Pornhub in there. Just go right there. But you're right. You're not a target rich environment. You're just not as an end user. And, and maybe you're a millionaire tycoon. And so I don't know, maybe you are a little bit more on the radar there, but yeah, it's the data center and that's where it's ugly. That's where there's lots of proprietary stuff going on and millions of end user information, available, mass quantities of data. So yeah, stay tuned for now. Sit tight. Don't patch. Let this sift the dust out a little bit more. And then, when Intel and others finally step out and say, okay, we're ready, then maybe consider it. But right now, just business as usual for the end user enthusiast. All right. I think the time has come because we're rounding the end of the hour. We're going to go a couple minutes over, John, if that's okay. Not too much, though.
I'll be quick.
We have drum roll. Can I do a drum roll?
Do it.
Really lame drum roll. We are now going to announce the winners of the Hot Hardware and Lenovo Hot Holiday Giveaway, where you could win an Ultrabook, a gaming PC from Lenovo, or a Star Wars AR augmented reality kit, where you could battle Darth Vader and other baddies from the Star Wars universe. All kinds of goodness here. 3 prizes, 3 awesome prizes, I might add. Thank you, Lenovo. To say thank you to those guys for sponsoring this. This is a sponsored promotion at Hot Hardware. That Yoga 920, by the way, we have that in the review queue right now. So we're going to be launching that review in the next couple of days, maybe early next week. We'll have to see. But yes, we've got winners. Marco, you've got 3. You're going to be Santa.
I do. I have the 3 winners' names listed in front of me. We will post something up on the site. So if you're not watching live, don't worry. You're not going to miss out. We'll post something up on the site. But the Star Wars AR kit, are you ready? This one is going to, and I'm probably going to mispronounce one of the names here, but AR kit is going to Endangered Tech Man. That guy is going to have some fun. Endangered Tech Man is winning that one.
I love the name. I love the name, Endangered Tech Man. I mean, are we endangered species, tech guys?
Well, you know, you can interpret this a couple ways. Technically, all tech is endangered because it all gets obsolete eventually. You know.
So kind of like a paradox of the actual stuff we love so much. We're an endangered, thing. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, next. Sorry.
Ooh, we are clever. So second place, the beautiful Lenovo game machine that is going to. I'm going to say Groy 22,799. Maybe it's G-Roy 22,799. Congratulations. Have some fun. When you get it, we want to see pictures.
And gaming mini cube, the cube Y720 or something like that. Is that what it's called?
Y720. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that beautiful yoga is going to Eric R. Winchell. Congratulations.
Oh yeah, Eric Groy and Endangered Tech Man. Awesome stuff. Congratulations, folks. Are they gentlemen? I think maybe at least we know Eric is probably a gentleman. You never know. But
I mean, he used his middle initial, so he's either a gentleman or a serial killer.
Well, hopefully he's not the latter. Hopefully he's just a gentleman. But yeah, this is great stuff, and we'll be announcing this on the site. We'll be posting up the winners. We'll give you instructions on how to get us your ship to information, which is critical, which we will then get to our friends at Lenovo to ship to the winners, the lucky winners.
Hey, G-Roy is George Hendricks in the chat. Congratulations.
George Hendricks. Holy crap, dude.
Cool. All right,
there you go. Awesome.
Congrats.
We meant to do that. He's in the chat. It's nice to have him actually get announced live on the stream here. Good stuff. So yeah, Lenovo's pretty quick about this. So stay tuned. These presents will be shipped out from the Lenovo and Hot Hardware Hot Holiday Giveaway. And of course, Marco, right? Stay tuned because almost right away, we dive right in with another manufacturer to either give away some great stuff or build a killer gaming rig with a bunch of sponsors. We like to try and give back almost every month to the community at HotHardware.com to give back the tech goodness that we know and love so well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would love to build a system next. So we'll see what we can pull together.
Really? Oh, cool. Marco designed some amazing systems with unbelievably impeccable wiring. He could work for like a Main Gear or Origin or one of those guys because you totally could lace systems like to the nines, man. I'm jealous.
I would love nothing more than to play with hardware every day. I mean, I technically do that anyway, but that's building systems my favorite thing.
Hey, that's words of wisdom. Find a job, find something you love and find a way to make money at it. And that's what we did. That's
it.
It's a beautiful thing. Right. So swing by hothardware.com where you'll find us on the web, hothardware.com, facebook.com/hothardware, twitter.com/hothardware, youtube.com/hothardware, or Hot Hardware Vids, G+, We're Hot Hardware there as well, plus Hot Hardware. Follow us around, like and subscribe. Hit that button, please, if you would, so we can send you notices when we're going to go live next. We try to be here every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll let you know if we change that. So get on that subscribe list so you'll get the notifications. And thank you so much again for stopping by, everybody.
Cool.
I'm going to